I still can't believe the MCU appears to have permanently killed off one character it had the most perfect excuse to bring back. Looking back now, I still can't believe the MCU appears to have permanently killed off a character that the franchise had already been given a perfect excuse to bring back from their demise. The MCU timeline is no stranger to killing off major characters, and this has become significantly more true in recent years, with the likes of Avengers, Infinity War's temporarily ending half of all known life, and Avengers Endgame seeing the death of original Avengers Iron Man and Black Widow. However, the franchise has also been no stranger to fake-out deaths and revivals over the course of its run either. Loki is perhaps the most obvious figure that comes to mind here, given his fake-out death in Thor, The Dark World, his actual death in Avengers, Infinity War, his revival in Loki, and his subsequent huge number of deaths and revivals in the time loop that defines the last chapter of Loki Season 2. With that said, while Loki is the perfect example when it comes to showing what the MCU's death mechanics can look like, the franchise has given at least one faked death to a wide range of heroes and villains. As such, the notable decision to end the life of one MCU character for good is all the more jarringly striking. Maria Hill's MCU story hadn't brought her to the forefront of the on-screen world stories in quite the way the comics have at points by 2023, but this seemed a fair move given that Marvel's comic world had far more time and releases in which to explore all of its characters. That said, Hill's story prior to Secret Invasion wasn't inconsiderable, with the character appearing in every Avengers movie in some capacity, as well as Captain America, Civil War, and being established as a key player in the franchise via her involvement in things like the Avengers formation and operation, and helping take down Hydra. All of this served to set up a bedrock for Maria Hill's story that suggested she could follow in her comic iteration's footsteps and be a notable figure in the MCU stories for years to come. However, the first episode of Secret Invasion made these hopes seem effectively impossible, since the show kicks off its story with Maria Hill's death, as the character is killed by Gravik disguised as Nick Fury. While it initially seemed there could be more to this given the twisty story of the Secret Invasion comic, the show continued and ended with no sign of Hill's death being anything but a permanent one. This served as something of a major disappointment for many viewers and set the stage for Secret Invasion's lackluster critical reception, since Hill's death didn't seem to have any real narrative purpose, resulting in complaints that her murder was simply because she was expendable to the franchise at this point in time versus any more significant reasoning. Maria Hill seemingly being permanently killed off in Secret Invasion's first episode is especially wild feeling when compared to the comics, as a notable element of Hill's story is her use of life model decoys. Life model decoys, or LMDs, are perfect recreations of the person in question who are able to act essentially as clones, and who Hill has historically used and sacrificed in her stead to prevent her own death. In fact, this happens in the original 2008 Secret Invasion storyline, where the character reveals to a group of Skrull who are preparing to kill her that she took Nick Fury's advice and had a life model decoy made of herself to protect her during scenarios like this. When the Skrulls shoot her, this is confirmed to be the case, as it's Maria's android replica that gets damaged, allowing the real version of Hill to get the upper hand over her attackers. Given Secret Invasion appeared to be adapting exactly this comic run, it added extra insult to injury about Maria instead dying for good in the MCU iteration of the storyline, since the franchise had the perfect excuse to flip it around. Maria's use of LMDs has cropped up in enough stories to be a notable part of her overarching comic arc, and while there are examples that likely wouldn't translate so easily to the MCU, like more than one decoy dying in close succession in the 2017 Jessica Jones comic run, to Jones's own exasperation, Secret Invasion's example seems a pretty solid template for things. Even if there were concerns about whether the life model decoys would cheapen death in the franchise, the dissolution of S.H.I.E.L.D. could easily have been used to justify only having a single LMD remaining in the franchise, meaning they could justify a lone death fakeout, while also explaining it would never happen again. Which would have also explained why Tony Stark referenced life model decoys in the Avengers all those years ago. Instead, the MCU adapted a story that actively shows how to avoid killing Maria Hill off, and intentionally chose to include her death regardless. While there are several explanations that may factor into why the MCU's rendition of Secret Invasion decided to kill off Maria Hill and forego using life model decoys, it's worth noting that one thing that could play a role in this is that the wider franchise had already made them a part of its story. As previously mentioned, Tony Stark jokes that Phil Coulson is speaking to a life model decoy of Iron Man when on the phone with him in the Avengers, setting the stage for the concept early on, as it seemed he may have been aware of S.H.I.E.L.D. producing the androids. Perhaps more importantly, though, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. used the concept of live model decoys considerably throughout its run, which makes sense, given the S.H.I.E.L.D.-focused installment would naturally explore a concept that is tied closely to S.H.I.E.L.D. in the comics. Given this idea is explored in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it's possible that it was avoided in Secret Invasion despite the source material using them to avoid any potential story repetition. Similarly, avoiding this story avenue ensured the Disney Plus show didn't risk unintentionally suggesting anything about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s MCU canon status. The MCU could revive Maria Hill going forward, but now it's been 2 years since her death. This could seem more like a retroactive retcon that risks reigniting frustrations about how her story has been handled. Indeed, the only smooth way it seems Hill could return is if Avengers Secret Wars does actually end with a soft reboot for the franchise, as has been theorized for some time. Whatever the case, the comparison between the Secret Invasion show and comics will likely remain a less admired point of the MCU's history as it continues onward.